It's my great pleasure to invite you all for our second session themed as the trade regulation, the new norm. We'll be discussing and exploring the future of trade regulations. Speakers will be across dairy, pharmaceuticals, politics, and food industry. And we will examine how the future of trade is post-COVID. The first keynote address will be made by Mr. Pranav Kumar, who's the Head of Trade Policy for CII. Pranav, welcome and thank you for joining us. Pranav has over 25 years of professional experience in international trade policy advocacy, including international business, strategy for private sectors, teaching, research, project management, etc. He's widely regarded as one of the gurus of Indian trade policy. And he has been very instrumental with India's stance on WTA Doha round for trade negotiations, EU India FTA, and IPR. Welcome, Pranav. Over to you.
Thank you very much. So I have 7 minutes to go. Okay. Thank you very much. And let me first congratulate my friends from New Zealand for yesterday's victory over India and emerged as the World Test Cricket Championship. So my heartiest congratulations to my friend and colleagues from the New Zealand. So I have been given two questions from Michael, and first one is what does India's post-COVID policy look like? And second one is will New Zealand India ever sign a free trade agreement, and what would it take to secure one? So both are very relevant question in the current context. Why I'm saying that, of course, we are in the thick of COVID second wave. In India, of course, things are slightly better, but if we are still living in the fear and of course taking all precautions, the government has very gradually and slowly trying to lift the restriction, but still the crisis is not yet over. So I won't say we are into the post-COVID era. We are very much into the COVID era at this point of time. And for last 1.5 years, I would say since February, when this COVID crisis hit India and the world, so we have been taking measures, because the first major crisis which has happened as a result of COVID, that it disrupted the supply chain, and the countries who were dependent on trade, particularly export and import, they got very adversely impacted. So as far as India is concerned, of course, our trade dependence is not very high in that, in a relative term, I would say, though we have 1.7% share in world trade as far as goods is concerned, and little over 3% share in services trade. But as far as supply chain is concerned, that we all know that we are heavily dependent on China for many of our intermediate products and raw materials, particularly because if you take the example of pharmaceuticals, more than 60% API comes from China. If we take our renewable like solar panel, again, we are a major importer from China. We import capital goods from China. We import a lot of parts for our mobile manufacturing from China. So that was the kind of, that gave a lot of concern to Indian government and industry. And since then, we have been trying to see how we can try to minimize our dependence on one country. And of course, and many countries are, not only India, ever since the COVID crisis hit the world, every country is trying to minimize the disruption in supply chain, also diversify the source of importing raw materials and intermediate products. So India is no exception. So that was the genesis of our policies when we started taking corrective measures to address the crisis emerged after the COVID first wave, and of course we are into the second wave. So over the last 1 year, government took several policy measures. So first, you must be aware about very popular that Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is Self-Reliant India. So that was announced last year by the government of India with an aim to reduce dependence on one particular country and try to promote local and domestic manufacturing. So Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant economy, there is nothing wrong in the concept. Every country wants to become self-reliant. Every country wants to strengthen the domestic manufacturing, because when you are internally strong, when your manufacturing is strong, then of course you can compete with the world with a more authoritative manner. So, and that is what we have seen in case of China also particularly. China is very strong in manufacturing, and so that's why China is the world leading exporters. China is also fast emerging as a major global investor also. So as a result of our policy around the Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant India, we have seen and we have received a lot of flack also from across the world, and particularly most of the foreign companies who have invested in India, who like to invest in India. Even though this year also we have received a huge investment, foreign direct investments, a record investment in India. But of course, many of the foreign companies, they have expressed concerns. So what we are trying to see that we want to promote Atmanirbharta, we want to promote self-reliance, but at the same time, we do not want to project ourselves that we are protectionist. And that is the line of argument as an industry body. We are also trying to ensure and trying to discuss with the government that no way this Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant India give the message to the world that we are turning inward, we are promoting import substitution, but it is with an aim to strengthen our manufacturing so that we can compete with the world in a very strong manner. So first and foremost, one major initiative which government took last year, that was the PLI scheme, production linked incentive scheme, under which we have identified 13 sectors, and we are providing incentives to these sectors. And this PLI scheme is not only for domestic companies, this is also for the foreign companies. Whosoever wants to invest in India, these sectors, there is a mechanism you can apply for, you can get incentive to produce. So by and large, most of our policy last 1 year to reduce or to diversify and to minimize the disruption in supply chain. And China, of course, is a major concern for us because of the huge, very unsustainable trade deficit with China. So that is the point number one. And second point is, will New Zealand India ever sign an FTA, and what would it take to secure one? So that's a tough call to make at this point of time. But good thing is that it's not only the New Zealand which has been singled out. I know that the trade negotiation with New Zealand has been going on for last 1 decade. It started in 2010, and still we are nowhere close to finalizing the deal. So, but it's not like New Zealand, because after 2012, the last FTA which we signed with Malaysia, that was in 2012, and after that we signed one very recently with the Mauritius, that is a very limited agreement. So India has slightly moved very slowly on the FTA front ever since. In fact, if you compare New Zealand with other countries like Australia, of course, same story. European Union, we launched the negotiation in 2007, so we are in 14 years of negotiation, nowhere close. Now we have decided to formally resume the formal negotiations. So the things are moving in a more positive direction for the time being, because of the India's renewed urge to link itself with the world. So EU, of course, is going to be the first one, as far as we know. UK also, we are moving fast, and of course, we have signed enhanced trade partnership agreement with UK. Under that, we are going to have interim trade agreement to begin with, and later on we will try to convert into the comprehensive free trade agreement. But simultaneously, I think government is also in the talks with Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Israel, GCC, all those countries with whom we are engaged for FTA negotiation, but so far we have not been able to move too far. So the good point is that there is a renewed momentum on FTA front, but how long it will take, because India, of course, is a vast country. We have a very noisy democracy. We have to address the concerns of a large number of diverse stakeholders. And with regards to New Zealand particularly, we all know that some of the sectors which are too sensitive politically, I'm not going into the economic logic of it. Economic logic might force us to go for that. For instance, dairy. We know that dairy products which would come from New Zealand, that would be high-end dairy product that will only cater to the needs of the 2% or 1% of the very rich Indian population. But of course, dairy is a very emotive and politically sensitive subject, because it concerns the livelihoods of 10 million population and all. So that has to be politically managed. And you are aware that RCEP also, when we have withdrawn from RCEP, dairy was one of the major factors. And there again, the demand from New Zealand and Australia was on the table for dairy, and we were just thinking that whether we can consider, and that has blown into a huge political crisis, and which forced us to take a decision. Of course, there were other concerns also. From industry side also, we were slightly apprehensive, and the major factor was China. But of course, industry was never in two minds. That we only told government that you just restrict this. We have a concern with China. We have a huge unsustainable trade deficit with China. So you just address that. We have otherwise no concern. But of course, government decision to withdraw from RCEP, that was based on the several other considerations. It's not only industry concerns. So we are very optimistic that with the renewed momentum with UK, and we will soon going to formally resume negotiation with other partners also. So it's not only New Zealand, which has been singled out, but the other countries also. So overall, the process has slowed down for the last 7-8 years. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Pranav. Really appreciate that. It's my now privilege to invite Simon Tucker as the keynote speaker. Simon, who's the Director of Global Stakeholders Affairs for Fonterra Co-operative Group Limited here in New Zealand. And he's had a farming life. He's done a lot of other roles in farming, but he's also been a diplomat before joining Fonterra, and is certainly passionate about New Zealand's primary industry. So Simon, over to you. You've got 7 minutes. Thank you. We're just having some technical difficulty with Simon, but we'll just work out on that quickly. It won't be long. While Simon is just yes, sorry, Simon, you just muted yourself. No, his mic is not working. All right.
Yeah, my apologies.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, look, I'm sorry about that. Look, I was just going to say a couple of things. You know, one is to just acknowledge the challenging time India is having. Obviously, with COVID, you know, we hope very much that this health challenge will be overcome, and India will recover rapidly. A number of us on this call were in India. It was the last international trip we made back in February last year. So a lot of very fond thoughts and good wishes from us to India. I'd also like to just echo Minister Phil Twyford in paying tribute to those brothers who won the Share Milkers of the Year as a cooperative. We're very proud of what those Indian New Zealand brothers are achieving for our industry. Look, just a couple of notes about Fonterra. We're a New Zealand dairy cooperative. We have about 10,000 farmer shareholders, and we have a deep business across the world, trade in about 130 different countries across dairy ingredients, food service, and consumer products. In India, we have a modest presence. We have an ingredients business. We also have a startup joint venture between Fonterra and Future Consumer Limited, which is called Fonterra Future Dairy, which was founded in 2018. Now, obviously, it's been a challenging time to start up a joint venture, and our focus at the moment is obviously in keeping our business in India running and keeping our people there, people there safe. But we look forward to easier times. We've unveiled the brand Dreamery in India, and this delivers wonderful dairy products to the Indian consumer using Indian milk. It includes cheeses, yogurts, ghee, milkshakes, and curd. And those products are sold in future retail and modern trade stores and other trade outlets across parts of India. We also are doing food service into India now with the Anchor Food Professionals. So really look forward to India's growth coming out of this COVID situation with a lot of optimism. In terms of the future opportunity and the role of trade negotiations, we believe there's really significant opportunities to deliver deeper relationships between New Zealand and India on dairy and on a range of products, in fact, and to drive commercially meaningful partnerships. India is the world's largest milk consuming country, and demand for dairy in India is growing very, very strongly. Clearly, what's driving that is India's young population. 70% of people in India are below 45 years old. And of course, this new generation, the digital natives, many are urbanized, they live active lifestyles, and many have more disposable income than ever before. This is a wonderful product of India's strong economic growth. And of course, such people are looking for dairy products that deliver really good quality nutrition. And while I think, COVID-19 has been terrible, one of the things it has reinforced is this health consciousness and demand for healthy food products. And I think that stands the dairy industry in really good stead. India's dairy demand, it's already the largest demand in the world, but it's growing very, very rapidly. And the trend we're seeing, which is really structural, is that demand in India for dairy, and I know it's not just dairy, other foods, is outpacing local supply. So we're following these developments very closely, and we believe over time there's an important role for us to play in helping meet those demand gaps. I think it's fair to say, despite the wonderful opportunities of India, there's also some challenges. It's fair to say that trade regulations and barriers which can enhance trade are sometimes a significant impediment to trade with India, and an impediment to further investment by New Zealand companies. While global value chains are being reshaped due to COVID and geopolitical dynamics, economies around the world remain more interconnected than ever before, and I think we need effective trade rules aligned to the commercial realities of modern day business to facilitate trade and investment. For dairy, India's government maintains strict controls on dairy imports through domestic subsidies and high tariffs ranging between 30 to 60%. And we acknowledge the desire to protect the livelihood of India's dairy farmers. But I think given that structural growing gap between supply and demand, we think such barriers are going to be increasingly out of place. There's also a range of non-tariff regulations that offer cost and complexity to business, and Fonterra faces a range of those. And I think our perspective in sum is that as India seeks to integrate itself more into the global economy, it's important to try and harmonise these regulations with international standards and practices as much as possible. We, of course, as Fonterra, are very strong supporters of deepening the India-New Zealand trade relationship through high-quality trade agreements, a bilateral FTA or otherwise. And certainly as a company, we were very disappointed when India, as one of the initial negotiating partners, pulled out of the RCEP agreement. We support strongly the idea of RCEP remaining an open door to India, and we certainly hope India will rejoin sooner rather than later. As I've sort of already indicated, commercially meaningful access into India offers Fonterra an opportunity to play an important role in meeting India's increased food demand. New Zealand's dairy sector can provide specialised dairy inputs, investment and intellectual property that will support India's dairy industry. One example is in the area of high protein dairy, which is not a traditional output from India's industry. So look, in summary, this happens in the context, despite the terrible global pandemic, of the global dairy sector having a bright outlook, with growing demand and growing and more sophisticated taste preferences. And despite the current challenges India is facing, we see it as an important, diverse and really dynamic dairy market. So we see opportunities for our consumer and ingredients business in India, and we believe it'll be good for India's consumers, food industry and economy and more broadly to integrate its trade regulations with those in the Indo-Pacific region. So look, we support a trade regulation framework that ensures a deeper India-New Zealand trading relationship, something that improves market access, supports investment and export growth, and brings about harmonisation of regulations with international standards. And look, other people have talked about this, but the people-to-people dimension should never be forgotten here as well. I think it's a critical aspect in realising this vision for the future India-New Zealand relationship. So let me just finish there. I really look forward to the panel discussion. I haven't mentioned cricket, but I think just to pay tribute to both teams and the spirit in which last night's match was played. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Simon. Really appreciate it. And also thank you for sticking to the time. Moving on to our panelist, I'll introduce one panelist just briefly and then hand it over to your moderator, Mike Fox. The first one is Esther Garbican. She's a senior manager, strategy, trade policy and advocacy for Meat Industries Association of New Zealand. And prior to that, she was in Beef and Lamb. And prior to that, she held a diplomatic role in India, in Delhi, as in the High Commission for 3 years, focused on market access for New Zealand companies, trade and economic policy. We're also joined by Uday Bhaskar, the Director General of Pharmaceutical. Now, those of you who don't know in New Zealand what that is, that's an equivalent of Pharmac in over here in New Zealand. And he has been the President, Director General since 2017. And he's also on the All India Drugs Control Officer Confederation. He has a vast experience in pharmaceuticals. So welcome, Uday. Followed by Uday is a very good friend, Stephen Jacoby. Welcome, Stephen. He's the Executive Director of New Zealand Institute International Business Forum, Executive Director of APEC Business Advisory. He has served New Zealand in various roles. And so welcome, Stephen. We're really looking forward to your insights especially into India and for New Zealand. Also joined is Bharat Joshi, who's the CEO of J-Curve Delhi Chapter INZBC. Welcome, Bharat. He's also the author of a very famous book, Navigating India, which is worth reading and buying it off for Amazon. And he also serves on the CII National Council and is the charter member of the Indus Entrepreneurs. Welcome there, Bharat. Also joined for the first time in anything to do with India, New Zealand is Dr. Divya Jaitley. She's the Managing Director, the Advanced Learning Institute and founder, Forethought Corporation Communications. She's a TEDx speaker and an award-winning consultant and an orator and renowned anchor on Indian television. So welcome to you also, Divya. And finally, I will hand it over to your moderator, who is Michael Fox, who's the Head of Communications and External Relations for Zespri, the wonderful kiwi fruit you find in India. And he's also an INZBC board member. And previous to joining Zespri, he had a career in the Parliament, New Zealand Parliament, as the Press Secretary and Chief Press Secretary for former Prime Minister Sir John Key and Sir Bill English, and Opposition Leader Simon Bridges. So welcome to everyone, and I'll hand you over to Michael Fox. Michael.